Well, you can see that I'm making progress now with the gear leg stiffeners. A couple of things that I want to make note of that I've kind of discovered, if you will, while trying to get this together. We all know that the leg itself is tapered, and the bottom edge of the stiffener more than likely is going to be straight. So you have to contend with that. You have to contend with from the top clamp down to the bottom clamp. The leg continues to get skinny, but the bottom edge of your stiffener itself, of course, is not tapered. It's pretty straight. So that kind of makes a difference when you try to figure out how to have the standoffs for the clamps, right? You want the clamp itself to go around the gear leg, but then you need the little ears that stick up so that you have a place to put a hole and grab onto the stiffener itself. So you may have to alter the length of each tab to line up with the hole correctly. So I've fooled with this, and I've tried a couple of different methods. I think I've come up with a method that may work fairly well compared to basically trial and error. I'll get to that in a second. One thing that I want to point out is you'll see that I have Gorilla Tape on the leg. This Gorilla Tape does not overlap itself. When you look on this side here, I believe you can see where the tape does not overlap itself. That's not that big of a deal. It's just something I decided to do. I didn't want a ridge there, so to speak. I may end up putting another layer on each of these locations just to give it a little bit more cushion. Of course, that is a cheat. If you have a clamp that's not quite tight enough, you can wrap extra layers of tape on the leg to take up that space. But keep in mind that's going to make the clamp a bigger diameter, and that may interfere with the fairing when you go to fit the fairing. So like I said, I've been jacking around with this for a while, and I'm just about done. And I think I've come up with a method that may work fairly well. I kind of wish I would have thought of it sooner. But anywho, so like I said before, you use a caliper to measure the diameter of the leg, and then you can use that measurement to get a socket that is close to that diameter, so you have something to wrap the clamp around to give it a nice shape and to get it close to the proper diameter. But to get the actual length of the clamp, here's what I'm going to try. So you can see that I've got a piece of blue painter's tape on the leg, and you'll note that I have it over top of the Gorilla Tape because I want it to be close to the correct diameter as I can get it. You'll see that this is the edge of the tape right here, and I don't know that that's going to be visible, but the edge of the tape is here. I wrap the tape around the leg, and then I make a mark where that seam of the tape is, right? So that's basically one diameter, right? From where the tape begins, it goes around, and then where it overlaps, I make a mark. And then, I don't know if I can do this on camera, I take the tape off without tearing it. And this gets a little weird because you got to fit it underneath different things. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this off. Let me turn the camera off. I'll pull that tape out of there and I'll come back. All right, so I have the tape now obviously removed from the gear leg. And like I said, you go from the tape edge, the edge of the tape, you wrap it around the gear leg, and wherever that edge starts to overlap, you make a mark, right? So this is the length of one leg diameter in that bottom location. So now I take one of my clamps. This is fresh out of the bag. I take the rubber cushion off. This 90-degree bend, I cut it off. That gives me just a plain piece of metal. There's the other end that I have not cut yet. This is the 90-degree end that I cut off. All right, so this is my now usable clamp. So one thing to keep in mind is you have to figure out where you are going to put your holes on your piece and how far from the edge you want your holes. Once you have that, then you can figure out how long you need to make the leg on the clamp. Now, my hole spacing from the edge of the stiffener to the center of the hole, I believe I did 3/8. I don't recall. It might be a little bit more than that. But using that as a reference, I've figured out, again, a little bit of trial and error, that the bend from the edge to the bend here, that is 11/16 for me. Okay. So again, when you come back to your tape, you have your clamp, you've cut the 90-degree leg off. From that edge, I measure down 11/16 and I put a mark. That black mark is my bend mark. Okay. So now I take my tape and I'll put this edge of the tape on that bend line, on the bend line on the clamp. I'll wrap the tape around the clamp, and wherever this mark ends up, I'll make a matching mark on the clamp itself. So if you can imagine the edge of the tape is lined up with this reference line here. I wrap it around, and then this mark gets marked on the clamp, which is this line right here. All right. Then that's my bend line. So I put a bend here and I put a bend here, and that should basically be roughly the diameter of the gear leg-ish. From there, from that bend line, I measure from there, I add that 11/16, and then I cut it off. So this is going to be my cut line. This is going to be the ear. So then after I cut this off, from there I measure down my edge distance to drill the hole. And I'll have to do the same thing on the other end. I'll have to measure down from the end and then drill my hole. So just as reference, for me, from the edge, I come down 3/16, that's minimum edge distance, and I drill my hole. From the edge, I come down 11/16 for my bend line. From the bend line, I use my tape jig, if you want to call it that, and I lay out the tape from the bend line. Wherever this mark is, that's where I make my other bend line. From the bend line, I do 11/16, that's my cutoff, and then from that edge, I come down 5/16 and drill the hole. So it's 5/16 edge distance. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to drill a hole here. I'm going to measure down 5/16 from this edge. I'm going to drill a hole. I'm going to clean up the corners and everything else. And then I'm going to hand bend this around my socket. When I'm done with that, this is kind of what you end up with. These are junk. These are ones that I've screwed up. Didn't get them quite right. But that's what you end up with. All right. I hope that makes sense. I hope I'm not boring the crap out of you people. But we'll see how this works. I don't know that this is going to work, but it seems like it might get me a lot closer than what I've been doing. So let me get this piece knocked out, and we'll see how it goes. So this is the finished product. This is the clamp that I just had showing you when I was laying out the tape and different things. This is that actual piece now finished. You can still see the bend line down in the bend. You can see I've got the hole drilled. I've got the edges cleaned up, and it's been formed around a socket, just purely by hand. Just hold on to it and bend it around with my thumbs. This was bent around a socket that is roughly the same diameter as the gear leg itself, so this gets me close. You can see that the ends, the ears, when I pull them together so that they're parallel, you can see that that is roughly the thickness of the aluminum gear leg stiffener. Just something to consider, just things to think about. But there is a lot of trial and error. This is not an exact science. There's a lot of variables. I'm not even going to get into that. But let me see how this fits. Hopefully this will work. And then I'll just make a duplicate using the same method with the tape. Stand by. Fingers crossed. Howdy, everyone. Well, I am pleased to announce that that actually worked. It could have been a fluke. This is the first one that I've tried doing it this way, using that tape. But it does fit, and it fits very well. I am more than impressed. But again, you can see the clamp fits around the gear leg really nice. You could see the bend line is basically in line with the bottom edge of the gear stiffener. And then I've got, plenty of edge distance on the clamp itself. So I think I'm going to keep that. I think I'll go with that. I'm just going to make an exact duplicate for the other side. Like I said before in an earlier clip, I had taken a measurement from the engine mount down this distance to set my first clamp. And of course I arrived at that distance again by shifting the gear leg up and down or shifting the gear leg stiffener up and down to make sure that it will fit inside of the fairing. So with my fairing basically a 1/2 inch down from the bottom of the fuselage, I could position the stiffener inside of that, and then I got this measurement. This measurement is the same on the other gear leg, and since I made the stiffeners duplicates, the stiffeners are exactly the same. So each clamp for both sides, so this top clamp on each side, this clamp each side, this clamp each side, this clamp each side, they should be the same length and shape for both legs. So I'm going to roll the dice. I have one clamp left. I have one location left to do. And since this worked out so well, I'm just going to repeat this for the other side.